Hey everybody, how's it going? This is Max with BuzzTox here. Before we get started, this episode is brought to you by Squarespace. It's an all-in-one platform to build a beautiful online presence and run your business. But I'll talk about them later. Let's get into the video. Now, this season has had mixed reviews. Some people felt like it was rushed, and it resulted in some of our favorite characters being misrepresented. So I wanted to do two videos for the two main characters of the show, Daenerys and Jon. In my first video, I talked about Jon Snow, and now he is the shield of ice and fire. And the key issue with Jon Snow I found in this season was that they failed to write what Jon represents, or what he symbolizes. Jon is ice and fire. He could have been the prince that was promised. And there was a lot of lore going into Jon Snow that people felt wasn't justified. And I feel like just like how Jon killed Daenerys, he should have been the one to kill the Night King. He is both ice and fire, so he has the permission to kill ice and fire, to make peace, which is a song. And that's what makes Jon not only the shield that guards the realms of men, he's the shield that guards ice and fire. But that takes us into Daenerys' key issue. For Daenerys, I think her character arc was correct. What she symbolized made sense. But I feel like the one area where they failed Daenerys as a character was the writing of her character. I think Season 8 made some very rash and very quick decisions that really undermined the character that Daenerys was set up to be. We've seen that Daenerys has had a kind heart and wants to help the weak. But then she ended up making some decisions that were in direct contrast to that. She's also a character that's very intelligent, and she's made countless battle mistakes that led to her defeat. So I think all in all with Daenerys' character is the conclusion of her character was correct, but the way the writers got her there discredited her intelligence as a character and her kindness as a character. There was no appropriate journey. So all in all, I think that's how they failed Daenerys' character. But let me get into why Daenerys went down the right direction, why she should have burned King's Landing to the ground, why Jon Snow should have killed her, and how I would have fixed the writing issues with her character. And I think the core of who Daenerys is that she's Targaryen. She's fire and blood. Since Season 1, she's taken what is hers and she's had a goal to sit on the Iron Throne. On the spectrum of ice and fire, she is completely fire. And she solidified that, becoming the mother of dragons, stepping into the flames, being unburnt, and birthing 3 dragons. And because of these actions, religion spreads throughout Essos from Kinvara, saying that Daenerys is the Lord of Light's champion. And later we see that Daenerys proves her right. And because Daenerys is just fire, she could have had one of the most insightful changes from becoming a hero to a villain. But I feel like that reality was just rushed. And it's all based on the dangers of duality. First, we have ice. That is the Night King. And he has always been an end-all, be-all villain. On top of him representing ice, he's also the god of death. And that is what he represents. And then you have Daenerys, where she is the polar opposite. Instead of ice, Daenerys represents fire. She can't get burned by fire. Her family represents dragons and fire. And she also represents life. Whereas the Night King controls the dead, the Lord of Light brings people back to life. Jon was brought back to life, and Daenerys stepped in the flames and rebirthed 3 dragons, a species that people thought would be extinct. And that makes sense. The Night King is known as the god of death, whereas Daenerys is known as the mother of dragons. A mother is a term that only describes a giver of life. And I think the overall arc of the show is that no two extremes are good. Ice is dangerous, but fire is also dangerous too. And the story deals with Jon Snow being in the center, both fire and ice. 2 very extreme and dangerous themes make peace. They make a song within Jon Snow. And it's easy for the Night King to always be a villain. He's the god of death. But Daenerys' turn makes sense. The longer you live, the more you get chipped away. The more the Lord of Light brings you back, the more of you gets chipped away. It's just like what they say in Batman. You either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. Daenerys believes that she knows what's right for her people and for the whole world, and she believes that she can make a difference. Just like how the Night King controls the dead, Daenerys wants to control the living. Both are extremes and both are wrong. And in Daenerys' journey to try and control the living, she doesn't just become the mother of dragons, she becomes the mother of fire and blood. And we see the start of this early on, deep in her motivations. Daenerys first of all wants to break the wheel. She wants to break the wheel that crushes the rich over the poor. She wants to destroy the ability for a person to be a ruler based on their family's name. But that vision that she feels like she's imprinting on the people of Westeros and Essos goes in direct contrast of what she's doing herself. She wants to break the wheel, but she is the wheel. She's a Targaryen, and she wants to be the king of the Seven Kingdoms because to her, it's her right. So in certain ways, Daenerys can be a loving and caring ruler, but she's breaking her own rules. And she's so filled with self-worth that she actually believes that she knows what's right and everyone else is wrong. And that goes against what she represents. Just like the Night King controlling death, she is controlling the living. And that justifies how Jon is the best of both. Jon is fire, but he's balanced out by ice, by his teachings from Ned Stark, being raised as a Stark. Jon is the living example of what Daenerys wanted to do. Jon broke the wheel based on how he acted. He was a no-name, he was a bastard, and he ended up becoming Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, and then became King of the North. Not because it was his claim, but because he was voted. So it does make sense for Jon to kill Daenerys. But the one issue I do have with the setup of Daenerys was that it was very rushed, and I feel like they undermined her character in certain aspects to forcefully tell their story. First, there's the good qualities of Daenerys that we've grown to know throughout the seasons. First of all, that she has a kind heart. She did everything she could to free the slaves of Essos. And she made a lot of choice decisions that weren't in her best interest to claim the throne, but to make sure the world was a better place. On top of that, Daenerys is also very intelligent. Every decision that she's made on her own has been the right decision, whether it's how she earned the Unsullied, or simply how she listens to her council, because in some cases she values their opinion or wisdom over her own. But with those good traits, there's also negative traits that they could have leaned on more in this season to justify her actions. She's very impulsive, and she gets emotional over certain situations. And because of that, it leads her to do acts that are very evil. Like in Season 2, when she was betrayed by Zarn Daradoxos, or whatever his name is. He did do her wrong, but she ended up locking her old friend and him in a cage, or a cell, in darkness for the rest of their lives until they died. Even though the slavers did terrible things to the slaves, she had them just rounded up and hung on posts. And there's multiple occasions where Daenerys gets tested and she wants to burn their cities and their people to the ground. Like here when they lay siege to Meereen. Or here when Daenerys finds out they got defeated at Casterly Rock. And another aspect of Daenerys that I think is important and became more prominent throughout the seasons is that in some ways she's self-absorbed. She believes that she is the mother of dragons and she has something special to offer. And her opinion and her actions are justified because she birthed dragons in flames. She did the impossible. And then she added to her resume. She freed the slaves, she gained their support. She ended up ruling over Essos, and that just kept fueling her ego. And then she talked to Melisandre and she applied the prophecy to herself. The way she talks to Jon Snow, and how she only has faith in herself. And I think that faith in herself escalates to the conclusion that we see, that she believes that she knows what is good and everyone else is wrong. And that leads to that tyrant example that shows that she must be stopped. I just feel like the arc of what we got, from the Daenerys justifying killing thousands of civilians, to the Daenerys that wants to fly all over the world and lay them under her rule, should have been fleshed out more. And I think if you kept the episode count the same, I think you could have made some subtle changes to at least make her changing to make such a dramatic move a little more justified. They knew all along that Daenerys was going to burn King's Landing in its entirety. Bran saw it in the vision. So there needs to be an event or something needs to happen to push Daenerys to that point. It has to be enough to betray herself as a character, because a rational Daenerys would never just murder civilians. And I thought this was set up decently in Season 7, when Cersei has control over the King's Landing and the Seven Kingdoms, and she undermines Daenerys at every turn. The key here is that Daenerys is trying to be a good person, and that's one key positive trait to her character, is that she listens to her council, which is primarily Tyrion, and even though she has dragons and she has the army, she holds back and tries to take over the Seven Kingdoms with peace, to prevent the loss of a lot of life. Yara, Ilaria, and Olenna Tyrell tell her to go attack King's Landing because she is a dragon, but she refuses. And every turn after that, she listened to her council, and that lost her Dorne, it lost her Highgarden, and it lost her Casterly Rock. And every turn, Cersei was defeating her. And I think that's a good start to show that Daenerys is slowly being chipped away. And then she decides to go help capture a white to make peace between the two sides, because she again listened to her counsel. And that leads into season 8, where we start to see everything Daenerys has fall apart. Because she decided to try and make peace and fight a war that wasn't hers, she ended up losing her dragon and her best friend Jorah, while Cersei solidified her place as Queen of the Seven Kingdoms. She experienced even more personal loss when she listened to her counsel and forgot about Euron's fleet, and Rhaegal ended up getting shot and killed, Missandei captured and killed. And those again are tools to chip at her. But then we go into personal betrayal, where she's in love with Jon and she feels like he is betraying her. He told his sisters about him being a Targaryen. She has people in her council who are plotting to overthrow her and put Jon in her place. And all of these things are great to make Daenerys seem isolated and push her to that place of burning King's Landing to the ground, but I feel like everyone felt like that wasn't a justified decision. She just paused and waited and decided to kill the civilians, even after the bell rung. And I think that's because they didn't hang on a theme that they introduced in the show, and that's poetic justice. I think firstly, they humanized Cersei too much. Cersei should have stood her ground like she did in the episode before when she killed Missandei. And when the bell rang and everyone stopped and Daenerys is sitting here on her dragon, Cersei should have kept on fighting, lured their men in, used wildfire, pushed Daenerys to the point where she has to do something rash. So all in all, I think season 7, in terms of Daenerys' character, was done well. In terms of season 8, I would change a couple things. First of all, I would spend more time on Jon and Daenerys' romance, but you would need more time attributed to it. The reason that would be built up is because when Jon betrays her and tells his sisters about his Targaryen lineage, it would hurt more. And there should have been more time on Varys, Sansa, and other characters who were undermining Daenerys to try and put Jon on the throne. Because Jon being a Targaryen really didn't mean anything in this series. The secret should have got out, and people were always supporting Jon's claim. And that would make Daenerys not only feel hurt, but betrayed by the people of Westeros. It would be an easier way for her to justify killing them all because they're ungrateful and they don't like her in the first place. I think it's important that she does lose Jorah and she loses people that are close to her in the battle for Winterfell because it wasn't even her fight. And it's also important for Cersei to solidify her place and her plan on the poetic justice for Daenerys. And I think they needed to define what that poetic justice was. Cersei should have never backed down. I feel like Cersei has become a character of spite. She would rather King's Landing burn to the ground than Daenerys get the throne. And poetic justice to Cersei is not only killing Daenerys, it's destroying everything she stood for. Destroying her character, destroying her vision, destroying what people think of her, making her look just like her father. And we would realize by the end of the show that Cersei has succeeded. And I think when it comes to the last 3 episodes and it's time to go fight Cersei, Daenerys should have been given much more credit. They should have been aware of Euron's fleet. In this scene, I don't think Rhaegal should have died. I think they should have anticipated that Euron's fleet was dangerous. Since Euron's fleet was so useless in the battle anyways, this would have been the perfect time for Daenerys to finally have a victory and destroy Euron's fleet. And maybe in that scene, Euron manages to get away with Missandei, and they can't attack the ship without risking her life, and that would result in this scene another step in pushing Daenerys into madness. But then we go into the attack of King's Landing. And I think my key disappointment with Daenerys' character was in this scene, where everyone stands down and she just decides to kill everyone. I think there should have been a scene here to make Daenerys blame the people and be angry at King's Landing as a whole. And I feel like it should have been a part of Cersei's plan. I feel like as Jon, Grey Worm, and the armies came in, and the Lannister men laid down their swords, and Daenerys was standing there overseeing everything, during the bell ring, everything should go chaos. At this point, Daenerys should still have Rhaegal. We should see Rhaegal get shot by a scorpion and killed. All because Cersei strategically decided to show mercy to make Daenerys vulnerable. And then have wildfire blow up and kill a bulk of her army throughout King's Landing. And because there's wildfire all over King's Landing, and because she felt betrayed, it would maybe justify her actions a little more in completely burning King's Landing to the ground. And then that would lead to this scene where she wants to rule over the world, make everyone abide by her rule, and then this scene with Jon where she says that she knows what's good, she knows how to help people, and I feel like that would justify her arc a little bit more. Obviously, Daenerys needed more time to flesh out that character development, but all in all, I feel like her quick decision in the last couple episodes felt really unearned. But all in all, I think her symbolism was right. She's the mother of dragons, she represents fire, and I love how she started off as a hero and ended as kind of a villain. Just in order to do that, they betrayed her character, and they didn't show a proper character arc. Now, it's time to talk about Squarespace. As I said, Squarespace is an all-in-one platform to build a strong online presence and business. The first aspect of building an online identity is getting started, and Squarespace makes it possible. You can purchase your online domain straight from Squarespace, and then you can get started. Build your website using a vast selection of modern templates that have been designed to be intuitive, efficient, and appealing. On top of that, it's important for me as a content creator to promote my personal content and maintain communications with my audience. Squarespace allows you to create background visuals to the website by adding a video of your choice, or if the background isn't enough for you, you can place videos from YouTube, Vimeo, or any other service. You can also pull content from your social media, like Twitter and Instagram, and it's flexible in any page, sidebar, or foot of your website. To try this out, go to squarespace.com for a free trial. And when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/BuzzTox to save 10% off your first purchase. But that's what I feel about how they handled Daenerys. Please let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Until next time, I'll see you guys later.